for men in their 70s. "Did they not teach you to row?" asked Dr. Civilai, the stockier of the two. "I was a politician," Comrade Civilai replied. "They only taught us how to bail." "Then that explains why we're going around in circles," said Civilai. The river ran high and fast at the end of the rains, and the current would have taken them far beyond Vientiane if they didn't lean into it with some enthusiasm. But paddling always appeared easier than it was, especially with a heavy cargo. From somewhere to the north they heard the crack of a river guard's rifle, but no accompanying scream. Neither the rifles nor the men who bore them had any accuracy. The old boys were not intimidated by the sound, because they knew how little chance there was of being hit. "And going around in circles would aptly describe the direction of our policies these past 5 years," said Civilai, mostly to himself. "Save your breath for a final push," said Civilai. "There's our signal. We don't want to overshoot." From the dense foliage ahead, 2 lights, one white, one red, flashed intermittently. "My heart can't take this," said Comrade Civilai. "Then rest your organs and put your back into it." All at once they seemed to be surfing the current rather than fighting it. They gathered speed, charging toward the lights. Remarkably, they had timed their trajectory perfectly, but not their velocity. Theirs was not a dignified landing. Ugly the dog, sensing danger, abandoned the vessel 5 meters from the bank and swam home. The corner of the raft snagged in a tree root, so the vessel spun around and hit the bank at speed and in reverse. Dr. Civilai was thrown to the deck. There was a loud thump when his head hit the bamboo, but his was a hard head. Civilai wasn't so lucky. He was jettisoned head first into the river mud, where he sank immediately until only his legs were visible. To his credit, he did not kick or wave them pathetically. They merely jutted heavenward like a victory sign. He was rescued by the reception committee. Mr. Gung and Madame Deng took a leg each and yanked him out of the mire. He emerged with a slurping sound like a large snail being pulled reluctantly from its shell. "Well, that all worked out quite well," said Civilai. The next day Chief Inspector Phosy arrived at Madame Deng's noodle shop shortly after the morning rush. There were never enough stools to accommodate all the customers who travelled out of their way to eat the best homemade fur noodles in the country. Madame Deng, never satisfied with shop-bought noodles, had taken to making her own beneath a corrugated tin roof behind the shop. Yet despite all the personal touches and time and effort the woman put into her dishes, and in the face of much criticism from her husband, she refused to increase the prices. "The poor," she would say, "have as much right to eat food of quality as do the more advantaged." Even the drivers of the black Zil limousines used by the senior party members had to wait their turn to be served. Their bosses thought they might add a few extra kip as an incentive to jump the queue, but Madame Deng would have nothing of it. Comrade Civilai often said that hers was the only example of functioning communism in the Republic. She replied that there was nothing political about it. She was just being fair. "Is he in?" the chief inspector asked. Madame Deng saw a familiar scowl on his good-looking face. Since his promotion to chief inspector 2 months earlier, Phosy had discovered a lot to scowl about. Many members of the Central Committee considered him too young at 46 to have been handed such responsibility. But Madame Deng, 20 years his senior, knew there was nobody more qualified or able to take on the role. She left Mr. Gung to clean the noodle tubs and walked slowly over to the policeman. "I'm very well, thank you, Chief Inspector," she said. "And you?" Madame Deng had been a freedom fighter in the clandestine war against the French imperialists, and she was well aware that she still intimidated even the most confident of men. In fact, her short shock of snow-white hair and her piercing hazelnut-coloured eyes gave her even more of an advantage. Phosy stood no chance. "I'm sorry, Deng."